David and Linda Harper were the perfect couple until the day a neighbor's dog dug up a box in their yard, exposing a chain of missing women and a basement so horrifying it shattered the illusion of the perfect family forever. In the quiet suburb of Westbridge, the Harper family lived in a white two-story house with blue shutters and a freshly painted porch that smelled of summer afternoons and careful planning. People often slowed their cars just to admire the roses. Linda Harper tended every morning, her hair tied neatly as she waved at passing neighbors. David Harper, always in a crisp shirt, would walk to his car with a friendly nod, offering small talk about lawn care or weekend barbecues. Their teenage children, Emily and Ryan, were top of their classes and excelled in swimming and debate competitions, bringing home trophies that sat proudly on a polished wooden shelf in the living room. They attended church every Sunday, hosting bake sales, volunteering for neighborhood cleanups, and smiling wide for photos that Linda often posted on social media with captions like, "Grateful for these blessings," or "Family is everything." Neighbors admired them, calling them the family everyone wished to be, a reminder that good people still existed in a world filled with chaos. The Harpers were the type who dropped off casseroles when someone was sick and who helped shovel snow for the elderly couple across the street. On Halloween, they set up a glowing display with friendly ghosts and warm cider for the kids, while during Christmas, their house was draped in elegant white lights, the scent of cinnamon drifting through the air when Linda opened the door to visitors. Their lives seemed beautifully ordinary and touched by the ugliness of the outside world, but quietly, the signs were there, small and almost invisible, like cracks hidden under fresh paint. Linda was often seen outside late at night, hosing down the driveway, even when it was already spotless, water mixing with something that sometimes smelled strange when it reached the gutter. David, who worked long hours at his dental clinic, sometimes arrived home much later than he claimed, with mud on his shoes and the faintest trace of a metallic scent on his jacket when he hugged his children goodnight. Emily and Ryan once mentioned hearing noises at night that sounded like scraping or dragging beneath the floor, but Linda would say it was just the old pipes rattling, and the children would believe her, drifting back to sleep under blankets that smelled of fabric softener and safety. Delivery trucks often stopped by the Harper home, dropping off boxes that Linda would quickly drag inside without letting anyone see what was inside. They never put out those boxes for trash collection. Sometimes the lights in the basement would stay on all night, a glow visible through the small windows lining the bottom of the house, even when the rest of the neighborhood was dark. When neighbors asked, Linda would laugh and say David was fixing plumbing or that she was organizing old boxes for charity donations. It was the kind of explanation that people accepted without question, eager to believe in the image of the perfect family. No one wanted to see the oddness hidden behind those warm smiles. No one wanted to believe that anything could be wrong with the family who seemed to live a life everyone else only dreamed of. The Harpers were careful, blending in with kindness, politeness, and a gentle charm that made people trust them instantly. They knew how to keep the darkness hidden beneath layers of good deeds, holiday parties, and picture-perfect family moments, ensuring that no one would ever think to look closer or wonder what truly lay behind the locked doors of the Harper family home on Maple Drive. The first sign that something was truly wrong came one chilly October morning when a neighbor's golden retriever slipped its leash and began digging near the side of the Harper's white fence. The dog clawed frantically at the soft, damp earth, pulling up clumps of dirt until something thin and frayed appeared. The neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly called out, trying to stop the dog, but a sharp, foul smell drifted into the air, making her step back and cover her nose. She expected to find the remains of a dead raccoon, or perhaps a stray cat, but when she leaned closer, she saw what looked like a piece of fabric, dark and rotting, tangled with something that looked like hair, pale and trembling. Mrs. Donnelly called the police, her voice shaking as she explained what the dog had uncovered. Officers arrived quietly, trying not to cause a scene in the tidy neighborhood, but word spread quickly as flashing lights painted the Harpers' white fence in streaks of blue and red. Neighbors peeked through blinds and stepped onto porches, whispering as the officers carefully pulled a small, dirt-stained box from the shallow hole. It was wrapped in plastic, and even from a distance, the sour smell of decay was unmistakable. The Harpers came outside, Linda clutching her sweater around her shoulders, her face pale, insisting they knew nothing about what had been found. David stood beside her, his expression unreadable, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as he answered the officers' questions with calm politeness. The children were kept inside, the curtains carefully drawn, as Linda tried to explain that perhaps the box had been dumped there by someone else, maybe teenagers or a stranger passing by. She laughed nervously, saying it must be a misunderstanding, just trash that someone buried without their knowledge. But the officers didn't leave, and the box was taken away for testing, leaving the Harpers' yard torn and muddy, a scar in the carefully trimmed grass. Days later, the neighborhood's unease grew into fear when news came back that the hair found in the box matched the DNA of a young woman named Jessica Lane, who had gone missing 2 years earlier. Her face, once seen on missing person posters and local news segments, returned to screens, her smiling photo now paired with the words "found in Westbridge." Linda denied knowing Jessica, her voice firm but shaking, saying she had never seen the girl in her life. But old photos surfaced online, images from charity events Linda had organized, and there in the background was Jessica, standing beside Linda, both of them smiling as they held up donation signs. Reporters camped outside the Harper home, cameras flashing as they tried to capture every movement, every flicker of emotion on Linda's carefully composed face. The neighbors, who once waved warmly and stopped to chat, now crossed the street to avoid the Harpers' driveway, glancing quickly at the house before looking away, pretending they didn't see the tension tightening the air. The children stopped going to school, the family car remaining in the driveway as days turned into tense, quiet nights. Inside the Harper home, Linda cleaned obsessively, wiping down counters and scrubbing floors, while David spent hours in his study with the door locked, the sound of papers rustling and drawers opening and closing echoing through the halls. They spoke softly, cautiously, careful not to let the children hear the fear in their voices. The lights in the basement stayed on longer than before, casting shadows that danced against the small windows, as the neighbors tried not to wonder what else might be hidden beneath the surface of the perfect family on Maple Drive. When the police returned with a warrant, the quiet of Maple Drive shattered under the weight of what they were about to find. Officers moved through the Harper house with deliberate calm, photographing the pristine living room with its matching cream sofas and framed family photos smiling down from the walls. They documented the kitchen, where the scent of fresh lemon cleaner clung to the air, and the children's rooms, neat and silent, with school medals neatly arranged on shelves. Then they reached the basement door, an ordinary white door at the end of a hallway, its handle worn from years of use. Linda watched from the top of the stairs, her hands pressed against her mouth, eyes wide, As officers began to descend into the basement, the first thing they noticed was the cold. The air was heavy and damp, thick with the scent of bleach that could not mask something fouler hidden beneath it. The basement appeared normal at first glance, with plastic bins stacked along the walls and a workbench where David claimed to fix small appliances. But behind those bins, a faint seam was visible on the concrete wall, a hairline crack that ran from the floor to the ceiling. When the officers pushed aside the bins and pressed along the seam, a thin section of wall shifted, revealing a hidden door disguised as part of the foundation. It opened with a slow, reluctant creak, and the smell that escaped made one of the officers step back, covering his mouth as he tried to steady himself. Inside was a small, windowless room, the walls lined with foam insulation and old blankets nailed in layers to muffle sound. A single cot sat in the corner, the thin mattress stained and torn, with a heavy chain bolted to the floor beside it. In the center of the room, they found a locked metal box, dented and scratched from the outside as if someone had tried to open it or escape its grip. Inside the box, the officers found jewelry tangled with hair, worn ID cards, lipstick tubes, and scraps of clothing that had been cut and folded. They were the remnants of women whose names had filled missing person posters for years, women whose families had spent sleepless nights searching, hoping for answers they never received. The officers documented everything, taking careful photos, bagging each item as evidence while the basement lights flickered overhead. Upstairs, Linda began to cry quietly, the sound carrying down the stairwell as the officers continued their work. David stood in the kitchen, silent, his face pale as he stared at the basement door. When the officers emerged, their eyes hard, they informed David and Linda that they were being taken in for questioning, that the items found in the hidden room connected them to multiple missing women whose last known locations traced back to Westbridge. Neighbors gathered outside, some filming on their phones, others simply staring in stunned silence as the Harpers were led out of the house, handcuffed, their heads bowed. The children, clutching each other in the back of a patrol car, watched as the life they knew collapsed in front of them. The basement was sealed off, the house left empty and quiet. But even as the police cars pulled away, the glow from the basement windows remained in the memories of everyone on Maple Drive, a reminder that beneath the perfect family facade lay a darkness no one had seen until it was too late. As detectives sifted through the evidence collected from the hidden basement room, a pattern began to emerge that none of them had expected. It turned out that Linda Harper, who had always been seen as the nurturing mother and the heart of the family, had been much more involved in the disappearances than anyone could have imagined. At first, people believed she was a victim of David's darkness, forced to remain silent to protect herself and her children. But phone records and receipts began to tell a different story. There were long calls to unknown numbers at odd hours, purchases of heavy-duty locks, chains, and cleaning supplies bought in cash from stores miles away, always under her name, with the receipts carefully kept in folders hidden behind stacks of old tax papers in the home office. In a dusty drawer in Linda's craft room, officers found a notebook, its pages filled with neat handwriting and highlighted names, dates, and addresses. Some were marked with stars, others crossed out. Many of the names matched those of women reported missing in the last 5 years. Linda had used her charity events and volunteer work to identify women who lived alone, women who were new to the town and rarely seen with friends, women whose disappearances would not immediately ring alarms. She noted details about their routines, where they shopped, how they got home, and what days they worked late, creating a detailed guide that was chilling in its precision. Meanwhile, David's connection became clearer as records from his clinic revealed late-night appointments with no patient files erased from the schedule the following morning. It was discovered that David often offered these women rides home under the guise of concern, telling them the streets were unsafe at night, sometimes even suggesting they stop by his house briefly to drop off charity supplies Linda had promised. These trips were the last anyone saw of the women. In the Harper household, they were ushered down into the basement under various excuses, where the soundproofed walls kept their cries hidden from the children sleeping upstairs and from neighbors, who assumed the Harpers were watching television or working on home repairs. The children were interviewed and shared that they would sometimes hear strange noises like thumping or dragging, but when they told their mother, Linda would smile calmly and say it was just the water heater, that the house made noises when it was settling. She would tuck them in, kiss their foreheads, and assure them they were safe. All the while, she was helping David maintain control over the women hidden beneath their feet, bringing down food on a tray, cleaning the room, and collecting anything of personal value the victims had, placing these items in the metal box that became a graveyard of identities. Neighbors recalled how Linda once joked at a block party that she would do anything for her family, and they all laughed, never knowing the truth behind her words. The Harpers had crafted a partnership, carefully orchestrating their roles to maintain the illusion of normalcy while satisfying their hidden darkness. Linda's gentle smiles and David's calm demeanor had allowed them to remain invisible, a perfect pair hiding behind bake sales and church fundraisers, while victims were taken and hidden in the shadows of the house on Maple Drive, the family's perfect image shielding them from suspicion for years. The trial of David and Linda Harper drew crowds from across the state, filling the courthouse with journalists, true crime bloggers, and families clutching faded photos of the women who had disappeared over the years. Each day, people lined up early outside, hoping to get a seat inside the courtroom to witness the collapse of the family once seen as the pride of Maple Drive. The Harpers entered in handcuffs, wearing the same calm expressions they once wore during church services and neighborhood gatherings. But there was a tightness around their eyes, a stiffness in the way they moved, as though they were no longer certain how to play the role they had perfected for so long. Prosecutors laid out every piece of evidence meticulously, displaying the jewelry, IDs, and personal belongings found in the metal box from the basement, each item held up for the court to see. Each item tied to a missing woman whose family sat weeping quietly in the gallery. Photos of the hidden basement room were shown, and the air grew heavy as jurors saw the stained cot and the heavy chain bolted to the floor. Neighbors testified about the noises they had heard, the odd deliveries late at night, and the strange smell that sometimes came from the Harpers' yard. Each testimony building a picture of horrors hidden behind the white walls of the perfect family home. Linda's notebook was read aloud, page by page, revealing the careful lists of names and the details of the women's lives that Linda had gathered, planning each abduction with a chilling sense of order. David's late-night patient records and his pattern of offering rides to women were presented, each case matching a disappearance, each detail painting him not as a caring dentist, but as a predator who used his position in the community to hunt without suspicion. For many, the hardest part was hearing how the Harpers continued to host barbecues, attend community meetings, and post smiling family photos while victims were hidden in their basement, while families of the missing were handing out flyers, just blocks away, begging for information. David claimed during the trial that he had acted alone, insisting Linda knew nothing, trying to protect her in a final act of control. But Linda, in a moment that silenced the courtroom, admitted that she had helped, that she had watched the victims, chosen them, and maintained their captivity to protect what she called the safety of her family. She explained in a cold, detached voice how she believed that as long as she and David continued their pattern, their family would remain untouched by the world's chaos, that the violence hidden in their basement was somehow a trade for the peace and stability they projected outside. In the end, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on multiple counts of kidnapping, murder, and conspiracy, sentencing both David and Linda Harper to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The community that had once adored them was left shattered, the house on Maple Drive standing empty, a ghostly reminder of how thoroughly a family could hide its darkness behind a mask of perfection. Eventually, the city ordered the house to be torn down, but even after the lot was cleared, neighbors said they avoided walking near it at night, claiming the air still felt heavy, as if the ground itself remembered the secrets it had held for so many years. The story of the Harpers became a cautionary tale whispered across town, a reminder that evil can thrive quietly behind white fences and warm smiles, and that even the most perfect family can carry horrors the world refuses to see until it is too late.